In the lawless territories of the American West, one name became legend: Billy the Kid. Was he a cold-blooded killer or a misunderstood young man caught in a violent time? 21 men dead by 21 years of age. A boy who became an outlaw, a legend who died before his time. This is the story of Billy the Kid and the Lincoln County War.
Welcome to History Corner.
Billy the Kid was born Henry McCarty on November 23, 1859, in the slums of New York City. His early years were marked by poverty, but his family sought a fresh start by moving west. After his father disappeared from the picture, either through death or abandonment, Henry's mother, Catherine McCarty, became the most important figure in his life. Catherine eventually took her two sons, Henry and Joseph, to the frontier town of Wichita, Kansas, before settling in Santa Fe, New Mexico Territory. There she met and married a man named William Antrim. The family's westward journey brought hope, but it also exposed young Henry to the dangers and opportunities of frontier life. In 1874, Catherine McCarty died of tuberculosis, leaving 14-year-old Henry without his mother's guidance. Her death was a turning point. Antrim, his stepfather, had little interest in raising the boy, and Henry was left to fend for himself. He drifted through boarding houses and saloons, surviving on odd jobs and his charm. Without a stable home, Henry began to fall in with the wrong crowd. His first documented crime was a petty theft in 1875, when he was caught stealing food. Later that year, he was arrested for stealing clothing from a Chinese laundry. Facing charges, Henry escaped from jail by climbing up a chimney, beginning his life as a fugitive. By the time Henry McCarty was a teenager, he had already begun using various aliases. He became known as William H. Bonney, a name he would use for the rest of his life. His ability to slip into new identities and adapt to changing circumstances would become one of his defining traits. Under the name William Bonney, Henry drifted across the New Mexico Territory and parts of Arizona. He worked as a ranch hand and gambler, but trouble seemed to follow him wherever he went. Despite his youth, Billy's reputation for being quick with a gun started to grow. In 1877, Henry's life took a darker turn when he was involved in his first killing. While working at a ranch in Arizona, he got into an argument with a blacksmith named Frank Windy Cahill, who had a reputation for bullying the younger man. The altercation escalated, and Cahill reportedly threw Billy to the ground. In response, Henry pulled a gun and shot Cahill, who later died from his wounds. After the shooting, Henry fled Arizona, making his way back to New Mexico. Now wanted for murder, he became a full-fledged outlaw. His charisma and resourcefulness kept him alive as he roamed the desolate landscapes of the Southwest. During his time on the run, Henry formed connections with various outlaws and ranchers. He was known for his ability to make friends quickly, but he also drew the attention of lawmen. His daring escapes and ability to evade capture added to his growing legend. Henry's early criminal activities were mostly thefts and small-time crimes, but they laid the foundation for his future as a notorious figure in the Lincoln County War. His youthful appearance, paired with his deadly skill with a revolver, made him both captivating and dangerous. By the time he became embroiled in the Lincoln County War, Billy the Kid had already developed a reputation as a fearless and charismatic outlaw. His early experiences, the loss of his mother, the descent into crime, and his first killing, shaped the person who would become both a feared outlaw and a folk hero. Lincoln County, in 1878, was a territory larger than the state of Maryland, controlled by a powerful merchant monopoly known as the House. At its head stood Lawrence Murphy and James Dolan, Irish immigrants who had built an empire through their mercantile store. They controlled not just commerce, but politics, law enforcement, and the lucrative military contracts at nearby Fort Stanton. Murphy and Dolan's store was price-gouging local ranchers, charging exorbitant interest rates and running their competitors out of business. They weren't just merchants, they were the law in Lincoln County. What we had here was a powder keg. On one side, the Murphy-Dolan faction with their political connections and hired guns. On the other, Tunstall and McSween, representing reform and threatening the House's control. But the spark that would ignite the powder keg came from an unexpected source: a $10,000 life insurance policy. Emil Fritz was a former partner of Murphy's who died under mysterious circumstances in 1873. After his death, Murphy and Dolan collected on Fritz's life insurance policy, claiming to be the beneficiaries. Enter Alexander McSween, a lawyer hired by Emil Fritz's widow to investigate the claim. What he uncovered would set the stage for one of the bloodiest chapters in New Mexico history. McSween discovered that Murphy and Dolan had apparently forged documents to collect on Fritz's policy. This wasn't just fraud, it was a crack in the house's facade of legitimacy. The insurance company sided with McSween and refused to pay Murphy and Dolan. But in Lincoln County, crossing the house came at a terrible price. It was during this legal battle that McSween formed an alliance with John Tunstall, a young English rancher. Together, they dared to challenge the house's monopoly by opening a competing store and ranch. The Fritz insurance case became a rallying point. It showed that Murphy and Dolan weren't invincible, but it also made McSween and Tunstall marked men. Murphy and Dolan's response was swift. They filed criminal charges against McSween, claiming he had embezzled the insurance money himself. They used their political connections to have McSween arrested. It was a perfect example of how the house operated, using the law as a weapon against their enemies. As the legal battles escalated, both sides began gathering allies. Tunstall and McSween hired young guns to protect their interests, among them a young man who would soon be known as Billy the Kid. Billy wasn't just hired muscle. Tunstall saw something in him, took him under his wing. And Billy? Tunstall offered more than just employment. He offered respect, guidance, and a chance at a legitimate life. On February 18th, 1878, the simmering tension boiled over. John Tunstall was murdered by the Murphy-Dolan men, allegedly serving a court order related to the ongoing Fritz insurance dispute. They shot him in cold blood. 3 bullets, 1 to the chest, 1 to the back, and a final shot to the head. Then, in a final act of contempt, they placed a rifle in his dead hand to suggest self-defense. Tunstall's murder changed everything. It wasn't just a killing. It was a declaration of war. And for Billy, it was deeply personal. He lost more than an employer. He lost perhaps the only father figure he'd ever known. For Billy and other young men loyal to Tunstall, the murder demanded retribution. In response, a group of Tunstall's men, including Billy, formed the Regulators. Initially deputized by Justice of the Peace John Wilson to serve arrest warrants, they would soon become a force for vengeance. The Regulators started as lawmen, but the line between justice and revenge quickly blurred. They sought out those responsible for Tunstall's death, engaging in a series of deadly confrontations with the Murphy-Dolan faction. The first major clash took place at Blazer's Mill, where several of Tunstall's killers, Frank Baker, William Morton, and Jesse Evans, were killed by the Regulators. But this victory was just the beginning. Within weeks, they had killed 3 men connected to Tunstall's murder, including Sheriff William Brady. By July 1878, the conflict reached its climax in what became known as the 5-Day Battle. The Murphy-Dolan faction laid siege to McSween's house in Lincoln, where Billy and other Regulators were holed up. On July 19th, U.S. Army troops from Fort Stanton, illegally supporting the Murphy-Dolan side, set the house ablaze. As flames engulfed the building, McSween was gunned down while trying to surrender. What happened next became legend. Billy, trapped in the burning house, organized a desperate breakout. He led a charge that scattered their attackers, allowing several Regulators to escape. It was the kind of daring move that would define his reputation. The Lincoln County War wasn't just about revenge. It was about power, about who would control the territory. And right in the middle of it all was this young man, barely 20, fighting for what he believed was right. When the smoke cleared, the Lincoln County War had claimed more than 50 lives. The house's power was broken, but at a terrible cost. McSween was dead, Tunstall was dead, and Billy the Kid was now the territory's most wanted outlaw. In the end, it was McSween's wife Susan who became the largest cattle baron in New Mexico. In the immediate aftermath, Henry hoped to secure a pardon for his actions during the conflict. He believed that his involvement in the war was justified as part of a legal militia. However, the newly appointed governor of New Mexico, Lew Wallace, showed little interest in offering amnesty to Billy. Wallace promised Billy a pardon in exchange for testimony against others involved in the conflict, but that promise never materialized. With no pardon in sight, Henry resumed his life as an outlaw. He roamed the New Mexico territory, rustling cattle, stealing horses, and evading lawmen at every turn. His charisma and ability to charm people earned him allies, even as his reputation as a dangerous criminal grew. During this time, Henry formed a gang, often referred to as the Rustlers. The group carried out various thefts and raids, targeting wealthy ranchers and corrupt officials. Billy's actions were often seen as those of a Robin Hood-like figure by some locals, who viewed him as a defender of the common man against the powerful cattle barons. In 1880, the newly elected sheriff of Lincoln County, Pat Garrett, made it his mission to capture Billy the Kid. Garrett, a former cowboy and acquaintance of Henry's, knew the outlaw's habits and hideouts. On December 19, 1880, Garrett and his posse tracked Henry to a cabin at Stinking Springs, New Mexico. Henry and his gang were taken by surprise, and after a brief standoff, they surrendered. Henry was captured and transported to Mesilla, New Mexico, where he was tried and convicted for the murder of Sheriff William Brady, a crime he committed during the Lincoln County War. In April 1881, Henry was sentenced to hang. He was transferred to the Lincoln County Courthouse to await execution. However, Henry wasn't ready to give up his freedom. On April 28, 1881, Billy the Kid made one of the most daring escapes in Old West history. While under heavy guard at the courthouse, he managed to overpower Deputy James Bell, shooting him with his own gun. As he attempted to escape, Billy encountered Deputy Bob Ollinger, who was returning from a nearby saloon. Henry used a shotgun, loaded with buckshot, to kill Ollinger, then made his getaway on horseback. The jailbreak cemented Henry's status as a legend. Newspapers across the country carried stories of the daring escape, portraying him as both a villain and a folk hero. Despite the increasing manhunt, Henry managed to evade capture for months, hiding out in the New Mexico territory and relying on friends and sympathizers to stay one step ahead of law enforcement. Pat Garrett's pursuit of Billy the Kid didn't end with the jailbreak. Determined to bring him to justice, Garrett continued to track Henry's movements. In July 1881, Garrett received a tip that Henry was hiding at the home of Pete Maxwell in Fort Sumner, New Mexico. On the night of July 14, 1881, Garrett entered Maxwell's home. As the story goes, Henry entered the darkened room and, noticing a figure, asked in Spanish, "¿Quién es?" "Who is it?" Recognizing Henry's voice, Garrett fired 2 shots, killing the outlaw instantly. The death of Billy the Kid did not end the fascination with his life. In fact, his death only fueled the legend. Some claim that Garrett didn't kill Henry at all and that the outlaw lived on under a new identity. Over the years, various individuals have come forward claiming to be Billy the Kid, but none of these claims have been proven. The Lincoln County War, and Billy the Kid's role in it, has been immortalized in popular culture. From films like Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, 1973, to the blockbuster Young Guns, 1988, the story of this conflict has captured the imagination of audiences around the world. Over 50 movies have been made about Billy the Kid. In many portrayals, Billy the Kid is shown as a tragic, misunderstood hero, while others focus on the brutality and chaos of the war itself. What makes Billy the Kid's story endure isn't just the violence or the mystery. It's that he represents something quintessentially American. The young man fighting against corrupt power. The outlaw with a code of honor. The tragic hero who died before his legend could fade. Over a century later, the legend of Billy the Kid remains as vivid as ever. Was he a cold-blooded outlaw, or a tragic figure caught in the whirlwind of a violent time? Perhaps, like many legends of the West, the truth lies somewhere in between. In the end, maybe that's why we keep telling his story. In Billy the Kid, we see the eternal struggle between justice and power, between loyalty and law, between the world as it is and the world as we wish it to be. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories from history. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you next time.